Hey everybody, welcome back to another Nature's Always Right video. Today I am here with Drake, one of the experts, American experts in Korean natural farming. Super excited. We just had a 2-day conference where he taught us all sorts of amazing things. We went super in depth into all the different inputs of Korean natural farming. It was really exciting. But I know that some of you guys probably haven't heard of Korean natural farming. So I wanted to introduce Drake and just say, thank you for being on the channel, first of all.
Thank you.
And could you just tell us first, what is Korean natural farming? Could you give us a quick explanation of what is it and how is it different than other regenerative farming techniques?
So to break Korean natural farming down to just a small size, because it's a very deep subject, it really comes down to two primary things. One of those being indigenous microorganisms and using the indigenous biology around ourselves to create fertility. And the second part being biostimulants, things such as food and medicine and cleanser, and those things that help to feed that indigenous biology to unlock plants and animals and even the ecosystem's full potential.
Wow, yeah, it's really amazing. And going through this class this week really expanded my mind onto really what's possible with KNF and all the different ways and benefits that it has for the planet and also human health as well.
Yeah, and I feel sometimes that's that human health's a component that's sometimes overlooked in gardening. We think, our growing plants, we think, just a plant, but really the end product is growing good humans, and so that's something we feature in Korean natural farming as almost a primary point.
Yeah, that's something so fantastic about it. It's such a whole system approach. You're observing all of nature, and humans are included in that. It's really a special type of farming. So yeah, I'm very excited to incorporate it into what I'm already doing with organic regenerative farming and just take it to a whole nother level. That's what I see Korean natural farming as. So I wanted to ask you some more questions, kind of about you. How did you come to Korean natural farming? How did you find out about it originally? Because you've been doing this for over 10 years or something, a long time, right?
Yeah, so I started Korean natural farming in 2007. I just graduated from college in computer science. And I moved back home and I began investigating into our food supply system. And I thought that if I wanted to have change, instead of asking someone to change it for me, I should be the person to make the change and then show how it's done. And so I got into farming and very quickly got into Korean natural farming. Met my neighbor who was into it, and he's an experienced 40 years organic farming. And he was as excited as a kid in a candy store. So when you see someone with that much experience find something new, I knew to tune in and to check out what he had going.
Very interesting. And you live on the island of Hawaii, the big island?
Correct.
Yeah. And from what I know, in Hawaii, Korean natural farming in America, that's one of the biggest kind of hotspots for it, as far as people utilizing the techniques.
Yeah, and that's largely as responsible from Dr. Park, who was a missionary going around, and he actually discovered natural farming in Thailand, of all spaces.
Interesting.
And heard that there was no smell pigs, and heard that it was a Korean teaching these methods, and he's also Korean, so then he eventually found him in Korea and then brought it to Hawaii, where he has lived for the past 30 years.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that. So Korean natural farming was started by Master Cho, right?
He collected a lot of recipes from various sources, and largely he got a lot of that education in Japan.
Yes, because there's Fukuoka, there's many natural farmers that were living the last 100 years that really pushed forward these ideas.
And when he started natural farming, it was just synthetic agriculture was just on the horizon. They were still doing traditional human manure or traditional fermentation technology, but the synthetic chemicals were on the rise, and he decided, hey, I want to stick with these natural ways and these things that are good. The byproducts are good, beneficial runoff.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I love thinking about it like that. So I'm a market gardener. A lot of the people watching are doing market gardens or home gardens or homesteading, things like that. How do you see KNF or Korean natural farming being integrated into systems like that?
Well, if you try to bite off all of KNF and all 9 solutions that I primarily talk about at once, it can be somewhat like a big bite to swallow.
Yeah.
So by just looking into a thing called seed IMO or IMO 1, which is basically getting IMOs collected on starch and then preserving them in sugar, and then when you need, taking a bit of that inoculum and putting it into water when you're doing any other type of irrigation or nutrition management, those microbes start to activate, and they're soil-borne microbes. So they start to do biotilling and all these things in your soil. And that's a very simple, easy place to start, is just simply getting your indigenous microbes and then adding them to what you're already doing.
Yeah.
And that way it's, it's an easy transition.
Totally. And that's a great recommendation. That's how I started doing this too. I did my first IMO collection. I was already doing teas and making compost, and I have chickens with deep mulch bedding. So now I can take this IMO 1 collection, and IMO means indigenous microorganisms, and inoculate even more diversity out there. And that's what's so amazing about IMO. So how is IMO different than like my compost pile? What is there something more beneficial about IMO, or what is special about it?
I would say one of the major differences between the microbes you get through composting and the microbes you get through the IMO process in Korean natural farming is you're really, in natural farming, you're getting the forest fungal microbes. And these are the microbes that have lived in the soil and with plants for thousands of years, where when you're doing composting, you're getting a higher temperature microbe, and they're kind of like new age microbes, that they're good and there's benefit, but we're really going after the ancient knowledge, like going to our elders for wisdom and getting these soil-borne, tuned to know how to work with your soil microbes. And so that's where their power comes in, because they're already, it's like they train to work in your soil versus training in a compost where then they have to adapt to your soil.
I see. Yeah, it's very interesting. And so there's IMO 1 all the way up to 5, and you're taking it through these different stages where you're propagating it and you're activating it, making more fungal strands in there, more advanced microbes. I know in the class you talked about that I think IMO 4, it's like they've lived for 10,000 years adapting to your specific soil at your farm or garden. Could you touch on that a little bit? It was really fascinating.
Well, so the how do you get 10,000 years? Because it's a 1-week process to make the IMOs. But a microbe, it reproduces on the average of they double every 30 minutes, meaning they're reproducing every 30 minutes. So if you take that 30 minutes and then scale that to like a human at like 20 years,
it's like a generation,
or even 15 years, and then you take that same thing and you multiply that out by the time period, you find out that 10,000 years have elapsed in the soil.
Wow.
in 1 week.
Yeah,
from their perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're changing, their next generation, but it all keeps adapting, and they're getting stronger and more adapted to your little microclimate. And so when you put them out to your soil, now they're going to work like no other microbe could.
And the one of the other differences with the IMO is they tend to be persistent in the soil.
Oh, okay.
Because they're not new, they're not coming from some foreign place. It's like you take the people in your neighborhood, you get them really good education, and you bring them back, they're accepted into the neighborhood. Versus you bring in some people from someplace else to teach you, you may or may not agree with their teaching, and they're foreign to you. So there's that, the persistence comes because they're from there, they got educated, then they came back, and they're meant to be there.
Really cool, interesting. Yeah, so these like lab created microbes and things like that, you bring them into your natural system, they're not going to persist. Like
they can have huge benefit. There's reasons to go get like bugs in a jug, so to say.
Yeah.
But the long-term persistence, the IMO will always,
win out.
Yeah, in the long run.
Cool. Yeah, it's just it's really cool to think about that and really define, I guess, what's the difference between all these different microbial solutions that are out there, and IMO to me, what got me so excited about KNF, it's like the most advanced version of microbes that you could possibly create, and then you tune them to your specific microclimate and even soil structure, the whole 9 yards.
And also the other component is tuning your microbes by feeding them certain biostimulants. So for instance, if I'm farming lettuce and I'm doing greens, I can make a fermented plant juice from the lettuce, and then I feed those to the microbes, and then they become even more tuned into your lettuce and help that growth happen.
Wow.
So by changing the foods you're feeding them, you can, for whatever crop, you can almost tune your microbiome for that crop, which is, that's great.
That's really great. So then my crops are going to be healthier, less pest and disease, maybe even grow faster, have higher yield, possibly.
Yeah, and especially if you're feeding them the biostimulants directly to the plant, you can actually start a positive feedback loop of increasing nutrient value.
Oh wow, yeah. It's just so neat. Yeah. Once you start going down this rabbit hole of KNF, your mind just gets constantly blown. So I highly recommend going down the rabbit hole. I wanted to ask you about your farm in Hawaii, and what does your farm look like? What type of farming are you doing, and how do you integrate KNF into your farming practice?
So in Hawaii, I'm doing largely tropical agriculture and polycultures. The crops I chose to grow are crops that have grown there for generations. So I'm largely using the Hawaiian traditional crops, taro, sweet potatoes, cassava, papayas, bananas, those things that have sustained the tropics for generations. And how I integrate KNF into there is, of course, when I'm starting a new area, I'm putting down the soil foundation, getting my indigenous microbes to live in that soil, and then sowing my crops using mulches, those types of things. But then pretty much once a week spraying the biostimulants to the plants, but also enough so it drips down to feed my soil. And the other really cool thing that I'm doing is I'm utilizing the microbial technology to raise pigs with no smell. So I raise pigs and chickens and cows, all of those things with no smell, no flies, no cleaning. And the pigs and the chickens are indoors. They're not just out on a pasture, and there's still no smell with no cleaning. So a lot of the food I'm growing is to feed my animals as well as myself. I really had a goal, and a couple years ago I was eating almost 100% of what I grew and just eating that. Recently I've relaxed because I'm out, doing a bunch of things, traveling, and just, there's a lot to juggle with that.
It's a lot of work to grow all your own food.
It
takes a lot of time.
And you got to get real creative cooking, but it's so rewarding because I know what went into it and the whole process.
What do you think are some important inputs for somebody like me who's growing lots of lettuces and leafy greens, and in the summer we do tomatoes and squash and fruiting crops as well?
I have a couple friends who are doing similar things, and some of the components they talk about the most are the calciums, and also in addition to the IMO, they also use a lactic acid bacteria, which is very similar to an EM, but except for you make it at home for pennies. And they're very successful with that. Leafy greens tend to be, quick growing, quick turnover. So ensuring that I'm spraying them with the biostimulants regularly so they have enough nutrition. And the lactic acid bacteria also can help with leafy greens to increase the leaf surface size. So you can get a higher yield because just the way the lactic acid interacts with the plant.
Wow. Really cool. So I've started to spray out lab on my greens. I was doing some FP, the food, the FPJ as well, and my plants haven't looked better. So I'm excited to keep testing it and keep seeing the results of it all. It's really fun to keep pushing it forward. So touching on the animals more, one thing that you taught this weekend that I want to start integrating immediately is including the IMO, especially IMO for the later stage activated IMO, and putting that in your animal feed so that when they eat that, it's not only inoculating the animal, keeping the animal healthier. But then when it comes out the back end, now you're adding that IMO with manure onto the ground and propagating the IMO further. And so it's a way you can make like a lot of IMO and use your animals as part of, integrate them into that process.
Yes. So I mean, I used to look at the animals as through different lenses, but what I've come to now is that my animals, my pigs and my chickens, are almost like a compost manufacturing facility for me. And when I feed them, they can eat, food that would take months to compost, and it comes out as manure in just a matter of hours. Mm-hmm. And then once they've made that manure, it actually sits on a deep litter system. So it's 2 feet of logs and then 2 feet of wood chips. And as that manure sits up there, all the beneficial fungus that's been inoculated and living in that wood chips comes up into the manure and then is able to start that composting process even further in a way where I don't have to go and turn my compost pile. The pigs are doing it.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about it being moistened. They're doing it.
They're adding that, yeah.
And so it's like they're like compost machines that are really cute and fun to pet and hang out with.
Yeah, it's so cool, man. Oh, I love it. Yeah, and then it's reducing work on the farmer while improving the life of the animal, the life of the soil. You're getting this end product that you can use to feed your crops. I mean, it's win-win-win all around, and that to me is like the essence of natural farming, is this complete synergy that is created.
Yep.
So looking into the future, I always like to ask these people this question, like, what is your vision of the future of agriculture? What do you think it might look like in 5, 10, 20 years?
Well, I see Korean natural farming as the one agricultural system where we can really continue with what we're doing. Not that there's reasons for it and against it, but that we don't have to do this radical transition away. We can continue what we're doing and substitute out component for component until we achieve like a biological, ecologically friendly farming system. Mm-hmm. And when I look out, I look and I think, more youth involved in farming is going to be good for us, just because it's good to get outside, and for that reason alone, but also the more you're connected to your food, the more you think about the world in a different way. Mm-hmm. And I can see moving forward in agriculture where I know the future of agriculture is biological.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just happens that these are a set of recipes that are well studied. Mm-hmm. There's scientific backing now. University of Hawaii has papers out on them. And I see this as a way where we're going to have to do a big transition here. Yeah. And so, the earlier you get started, the easier it's going to be on all of us, because it's really about the end goal. Are we as a society getting healthier, happier, having more time to spend with our loved ones? And those are the goals since forever. Yeah. And so it's just up to us, and through farming we can make this happen.
Yeah. These are the tools we can use to achieve that goal. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really like that. Yeah, it's just not going to happen overnight, and it's going to be like in stages, like you were describing. So cool, man. Thank you so much for talking with us and telling us more about Korean natural farming. If people want to learn more about Korean natural farming, I highly recommend Drake's YouTube channel. I'm going to put a link down in the description, his Instagram, and where else are good places that they can learn from you.
I've also been running PureKNF.com, which redirects you to naturalfarminghawaii.net, and that's basically some how-tos on how to do it, but it also kind of covers my journey over the past since 2011 up till now of more than just farming. It's community organizing, it's education, it's all these things, and that kind of highlights it. So PureKNF.com will get you there.
Yeah, I'll put all those links down in the descriptions for everybody. Highly recommend checking out and learning more about Korean natural farming. It is just, it's so fun, and there's so many passionate, amazing people involved in it, like Drake. So can't thank him enough for putting all his educational content out there and his passion. So thank you, and hopefully see you again someday. I'd love to do a video at your farm someday.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed this session. The group that was here was amazing, and Stephen was even just a big part of that. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, man.